Welcome to An Hour to Give. I'm Sam LaPrade, and today we're going to be discussing everything Ottawa Hospital, and we're going to be talking with a number of different representatives. And first in the studio, we have Dr. John Bell, Senior Scientist. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
And on the phone, we have Stefany Dupont. Welcome, Stefany.
Hi, thank you for having me as well.
And Stefany's a patient, and she's going to talk to us about her experience. And, you know, a lot of listeners have known the name Dr. John Bell over the years, of course, incredible researcher here at the Ottawa Hospital. We wanted to talk a lot today about CAR-T. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Sure. So, cancer is a really challenging disease. We're always looking for new approaches to try to treat it. And one that's really caught the imagination of a lot of scientists and docs around the world is something that's referred to as CAR-T therapy. The CAR means chimeric antigen receptor. So as scientists, we like to think up cool acronyms.
I love it.
So, yeah. So anyhow, what it really is, which I think is really exciting, is that we take a patient's immune cells out of their body, and then in the test tube, we reprogram them. And these immune cells now will be able to identify the cancer within the patient and attack it and eliminate it. And this is really an amazing kind of therapy that for some kinds of cancers is almost a miracle in the sense that people, even with very advanced kinds of diseases, as Stefany had it at her original, before she was treated, can be treated very successfully with this approach. So it really is personalized in the sense that you take the patient's immune system out of their body, but then we just, as I said, target it by using a virus to infect it and make that immune cell now recognize the cancer as foreign and attack it.
It's amazing. I mean, when I hear, that 1 in 2 people will be diagnosed with cancer, it affects so many people. Can you explain a little bit about the complexity of cancer research and why it's so challenging to cure?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sam. You hear the one word cancer, but really it's an umbrella word for all sorts of diseases. Now, first of all, as everyone knows, there's cancers of almost every organ in your body: skin, breast, prostate, brain, pancreas. They're all organs can be affected by this disease, but what makes it even more challenging is that it is a disease of your own genetic information, so that each person's cancer is unique. So that really makes it not just a dozen or 24 or 50 kinds of cancers, but actually as many as there are patients. And so we have to find therapies that will attack that individual patient's disease. And so it's really made it challenging. If you get the flu, you know what you have to attack. You have to attack the flu virus.
Right.
But when cancer, we don't know what we have to attack, and we don't know how to attack it in different patients. So it really is a complex disease that has taken a long time to get a handle on, to understand how it happens, and even longer to get new therapies. But what has really changed in the last few years is this concept of using the patient's own immune system to attack the cancer. And it can do that, and it can evolve. Your immune system will evolve to recognize your cancer as foreign and hopefully eliminate it.
The Ottawa Hospital and yourself have been incredible leaders. Talk to us a little bit about how the Ottawa Hospital is leading the way when it comes to CAR-T cell therapy.
Yeah, well, the Ottawa Hospital is really one of the leading research and treatment centers in Canada, without question. We do a lot of what are called clinical studies. So I'm actually a PhD scientist, so I'm more of a mouse doctor. I don't actually see patients. But the sort of fundamental research that I do is then translated, as it is, to the clinic by other clinicians who do clinical studies. And we have a lot of clinical studies going on at the Ottawa Hospital. What we recognize in the CAR-T field is, although it's very exciting, very promising, and really potentially curative for many people, it was not happening in Canada. There was no clinical studies going on in Canada. There were no people developing it. So we said, let's do this at the Ottawa Hospital. And we have scientists now who are working and manufacturing components of the therapy. And then we also linked with people across the country, scientists and clinicians in British Columbia, for instance, where we're now working together on the first clinical study that will be done in Canada using products that were produced here in Ottawa and in British Columbia. So that's pretty amazing. The real important aspect of this is not so much that we're going to get this first thing off the ground, which is going to be really important, is that the future now is we can develop new kinds of CAR therapy for more kinds of patients. And it was really building that infrastructure and getting things started here in Ottawa, which was really, I think, key in what we were trying to do.
And to your point, I mean, it really is all about the patient and their quality of life. And of course, Stefany, you certainly have a journey with the CAR-T treatment. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. So I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia at age 13, and I went through traditional pediatric treatments, and it was 5 years into remission when I relapsed at the age of 20. After that, I got a bone marrow transplant, but then relapsed again after a year and a half post-transplant. So the chances of me surviving this second relapse were very low because traditional treatments had not worked for me. So I was told about the option of CAR T cells as a potential, clinical trial to be tested out to see if that could help me and put me back into remission. But as Dr. Bell said, that wasn't available in Canada at the time, so that was in 2017. And I had to go to the United States to receive the treatment. But in the meantime, a lot of things happened. It took a while for me to get there in the first place. And, during that period of time, my disease kept progressing. So it was quite a challenge to maintain it under control while waiting to get access to the States. So I'm very pleased to hear that now patients in my kind of situation that have a very aggressive disease and refractory disease will be able to access this kind of, revolutionary therapy in the comfort of their home without having to leave their comfort zone and having to leave their friends and their support behind. So I'm really proud of what's been happening in Ottawa.
It's a really good point, Stefany, because we are so lucky to have the Ottawa Hospital right in our back door, if you will, and it's such an integral part of our city. And to your point, to be able to have this happening here and you can be around your loved ones and not have to travel.
Mm-hmm.
And how are you feeling today, Stefany?
So this is something that I really insist on when I share my experience with CAR T cells, is that although this is not necessarily the case for every patient, in my experience, CAR T has allowed me not only to go back into remission, but to also get my quality of life the way that it was before, even before I got the transplant, before I relapsed the first time. So now I get to really do the things that I've been wanting to do over the years and not worry about any kind of for example, with a transplant, you always have the risk of graft versus host disease or, any complications that can arise even a few years after the transplant. But with CAR T cells, I've yet to see any kind of long-term side effects, and the quality of life is so much greater, and you can go back to feeling normal so quickly compared to traditional treatment. So that being said, I'm still under the risk of long-term complications, but these would not necessarily come from CAR T, rather from the chemo and the radiotherapy and all of this toxicity that I received. So for me, if more people can access these kinds of treatments and ultimately if these new treatments can become the norm, I think it would completely change the way that patients experience cancer.
Stefany, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it's 100% true. Is that when you have something that's come by in terms of research that can really change someone's life like it has yours, then we all really need to get behind it. And I know, Dr. Bell, I know you're working from a research perspective, and we see the incredible impact that the CAR T has had on Stefany's life. What else do you think it provides patients?
Well, I think it's important for people to know that there's hope, and actually a lot of hope, that all these diseases can be treated effectively. We're getting closer to that. I think Stefany's a fantastic example, but I would say what I've seen in my career, which is spanning about 35 years now, is that for many years we were only making small incremental differences. But now we're making changes that are really changing people's lives, like Stefany's. We're getting to the stage now where we actually can do treatments which we've learned about only in the last 5 years, doing things like clinical studies as well as basic science, that's really changing things. It's sort of akin to the space program where, we learned to fly to the moon, but not only did we do that, but we learned how to make microwave ovens, and we made, all those other things. And that's been the same thing with basic science. We've learned a lot that's now pushed us forward, and I think we're starting to get to the stage where we can really hope to offer patients a lot more opportunities to do well in their treatment.
We have lots more to learn about CAR T therapy coming after this break. And I want to make sure that people also know, Dr. Bell, and you would agree that this type of research only happens at the Ottawa Hospital due to the generosity of donors. And I really do encourage donors to reach out. And one of the ways they can do that is through a website called supporttoh.ca. And we do encourage them to do that. What would you say to donors that are helping out, Dr. Bell?
Well, we're all hopeful that we're going to change cancer care very significantly in the next several years, and they're part of that team because they actually, through their support, make it possible for us to have the buildings we work in, the equipment we use. We have a manufacturing facility here in Ottawa, which is the only one in Canada, which allows us to produce products that we can test in patients. That came because of community support that was able to help us match money we got from the government to build the building we're in and to build the facilities we have. So, I really want to say thanks to everyone who's supported us so far, and I think more investment now is key because we're actually at that, that upswing in the curve where every dollar even makes more impact now because we've learned a lot.
Absolutely. And once again, that website, Support TOH, which is support to the Ottawa Hospital, supporttoh.ca. We'll be back with Dr. Bell and Stefany after this. Welcome back to An Hour to Give. I'm Sam LaPrade, and of course, we're joined by Dr. John Bell and Stefany Dupont, both representing the Ottawa Hospital, and we're chatting about everything CAR T therapy, and it's really fascinating to me that this is happening in Ottawa. Stefany, what does it mean to you to know that this research and the Ottawa Hospital is leading the way in this cancer research here in Canada?
Well, first of all, I'm very proud because I am from the Ottawa region, and so I just think that it's so cool that Ottawa is, now an innovative city in terms of health and healthcare for patients. But also for me, it's just reassuring because I know that now patients who are in the situation I was in about 2 years ago now don't have to resort to making the journey to the United States with all that it entails to get treated and to basically have their life saved. So for me, that's very important because I did get the treatment in the end, but there were many, many bumps and obstacles along the way that could have even costed me my life. So to know that patients will now be able to get treated more easily, more smoothly, and in the comfort of their own home is really something that I am very proud to hear about.
Absolutely. And I think we were mentioning earlier, too, that if someone's listening and they're inspired and maybe they've had a family member go through this, they can visit supporttoh.ca and make a gift, maybe hearing about your story today or maybe on behalf of one of their loved ones. And I think, Dr. Bell, when we think about the revolutionary cancer research at the Ottawa Hospital, I don't think many people realize it's happening right here in Ottawa. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think, we're one of the best kept secrets in the city right now. We have a really, I think, innovative cancer research grouping there. We have a lot of scientists like myself who are PhD scientists and a lot of really bright clinicians who are clinician scientists. And we work together in a very interactive way, which allows us to make discoveries, very fundamental ideas in the test tube, and then rapidly translate them into the clinic to see if they're going to really work. Because, you've heard before, you can cure mice, but we really want to cure people. And so I think it's absolutely, the setup that we have in Ottawa is amazing. It's one of the reasons I moved here is because I thought I have an opportunity to really take my discoveries and test them in people. And with this, as I mentioned before, the manufacturing facility we have here, it really provides us with the opportunity to do things very quickly and quickly get into people who need them.
Well, I think it's interesting. I was, you may not remember, but many, many years ago, you and I met when I worked at the Ottawa Hospital Foundation. And then you were receiving Researcher of the Year award. And to think, close to 20 years later, you're still doing incredible research. What does it mean for you to be in this city and doing this type of work? We all in Ottawa know what a great city this is. It's a phenomenal place to live. And we brought up our family here, of course. We just love everything about Ottawa. But I think it's the environment that we've created here that's been so good for my career and given me an opportunity. As you say, you're sort of dating me now by saying it was that long ago. But basically, the reality is that research is a long process because there's so much to be learned, and it takes a long time. You have to be in a very supportive environment to make that happen. And Ottawa certainly is that. It's a place where
They've been very supportive of the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute. It's been very supportive of my career and all the people who've trained with me. We've trained over 50 people who've gone on to other institutes to start their own research groups or work in industry. So it's been a really great opportunity for me to come here and really test out my ideas.
I think it's really interesting, too, from a donor's perspective. You think about someone in the community, very generous in the community, they want to make an impact, and the relationship between the donor and the researcher, you can make incredible things happen. You see it in the future, you can see what's going to happen, and then you have these donors that come in and they believe in you. What does that feel like?
Well, it's a huge responsibility. When you take someone's money, you want to make sure that you're actually using it to the best value. And we have some very generous people in Ottawa, people who unfortunately have had this disease, and then they want to see it not happen for someone else, and so they want to make donations to the foundation to support this hospital. And I think it's a huge responsibility to make sure that we make the best use of it, and I can guarantee you that's exactly what we do. We make sure that every penny that's invested is used in a way which is going to help advance the cause and make sure that people do better in cancer, but also in other diseases that are, as you know, many are treated at the Ottawa Hospital, and there's a lot of research in all those areas as well.
For sure, absolutely. And once again, the website we were referring to earlier is supporttoh.ca, and that's the website you can go to. Lots of information there. And I think there's so many different ways people can give. And I think when they give to research, they're really giving to the next generation. Really they can impact their own family moving forward. And that's a really big piece too.
Absolutely. And what's changed in cancer research, and I totally agree with you that you're investing in your children, your grandchildren's future. But with the changes that are happening now in therapies, we're even making investments that are going to help people now. And
Amazing.
So I think it's a huge difference than in the past. It used to be, I'm going to donate because I don't want my grandson to have this problem. But now it is impacting people on a daily basis.
Well, Stefany's a great example of that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Stefany, what does the community support have mean to you over the years?
Well, I often say this, if I hadn't had the chance to be in an environment that's supportive and that gives me hope and opportunity to move forward and continue my journey, I don't know if I would have made it or if my treatments would have been as successful. So health is not necessarily about just the physical aspects of how you're doing and how you're feeling. It's also a lot about socially how you're supported, how you feel about the environment that you're in, how it relates to you, and the positivity and the encouragement that I've received from people around me have really pushed me to continue and to believe in myself and in research and in the care around me. So it's not only about how my blood is doing, it's also about how my mental and physical state connect and my emotional state as well. So for me, the idea of having the support of my community, the support of my family and my friends is extremely important. It helps me a lot, and I think it's vital for everyone to receive that kind of support when they're going through such a difficult time, for sure.
Oh, it's such a good point, Stefany, because you're right. I mean, treating your disease is one thing, but everything else that goes with it, the emotions and the family support and all of those pieces certainly do add to that as well.
Mm-hmm. And not everyone has the chance to be supported that way. So if, for example, a patient has a very difficult family situation or is not the most extroverted person and doesn't have a lot of support from his or her friends, well, there are always things that can come to compensate that. So, for example, support groups or therapy, counseling, even art therapy, yoga, all of these things I think are really important also to invest in and to support, to help patients grow despite their illness.
For sure. And the Ottawa Hospital Foundation is doing incredible work as well. Dr. Bell, can you do me a favor and dream for me? Tell me where you see this type of therapy and research taking us in the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's every reason to believe that in the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to make such significant changes in cancer therapy that people will no longer be suffering the way that they suffer now. We use chemotherapy and radiation therapy, and they're very effective in many diseases, but they're not the best way to go, in my opinion. I think these new ways we're retraining the patient's immune system to recognize their own cancer so they can reject it themselves is a much better approach. And although we're not there yet, I think the things we've seen in the clinic are so encouraging that I have to believe that if we keep pushing hard in this, we're going to find new ways to treat people, prevent cancers from starting in the first place by various kinds of immunological manipulations, but also treating people who have very advanced disease as well in a way which is going to be much more successful, and they're going to end up having long-term, what we hope, cures.
As a young researcher, could you have ever imagined that you would be doing this kind of work?
You know, I started off working on virology, the study of viruses, many years ago, and my career has sort of wandered over the years, but once I got into the cancer space and realized what we could do if we actually focused our efforts, I sort of became, really involved in that deeply, and it's been a great, always with the vision that we'd get to the stage where one day we would have much better outcomes. And so that's starting to happen. It's pretty gratifying, actually.
Absolutely. And you're the most humble man I've ever met, honestly. Over the years, I've watched your career, and it really is amazing. And we're so happy to have you here in Ottawa. And I know Stefany as well. You're happy that this type of work is being done in our very own city.
For sure. And it's like Dr. Bell was saying, with the years it progresses more and more. And, knowing the fact that CAR T therapy only started in 2012, if I had relapsed in 2012, I would not have accessed something like that. And if something were to happen to me in the coming years, well, I know that now there are a lot of things being done to change the way cancer is treated, and that maybe there will be something else there to help. It's always evolving, and that's a very reassuring thought.
Absolutely. Stefany Dupont, thank you so much for joining us, a patient at the Ottawa Hospital. And of course, Dr. John Bell, senior scientist at the Ottawa Hospital. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Stay with us. We've got more information about the Ottawa Hospital, and of course, visit supporttoh.ca. Stay with us.